I will be making some forward-looking statements today, so I'll draw your attention to that slide. When you're looking at investing in a precious metals exploration company, I think there's really three things you need to focus on. One, that it's got a high quality asset. Two, that it still has lots of potential left. And three, that it has a strong management and shareholder group behind us. We certainly check off all three of those boxes. In our case, it's the La Virginia project located in eastern Sonora. As you mentioned, we acquired that project from Pan American and as well as a local private prospect generator group for the internal claims. And we were able to bring the whole land package back together and get to work and get to where we are today. The big event for us was the discovery at the El Ruby zone. It sat about 4 kilometers north of where all the historic work was originally done by mine finders and Pan American on the project. And very quickly upon making that discovery and the work that we've been doing, we were able to come out with a maiden 43-101 resource just recently in the last month or so. We're very excited about that resource, but it's just a start for us. Just the El Ruby zone, never mind the rest of the targets that have never been tested, is still open along strike and at depth. Our work this year is really going to focus on expanding the open pit component of that, but also trying to introduce a maiden underground resource to the El Ruby area. The original maiden resource, we had some high grade hits that were below the pit. We didn't have enough tonnage in that area yet, but we will very much be focusing on creating a maiden underground resource, and we have a number of different ideas that we'll talk about later into the presentation here that we're really excited about on that expansion. Like I said, where we expand potential, we're certainly going to expand on the resource, but we also have a number of other targets and anomalies that have never been tested that we are confident that we're going to make additional discoveries on this project. So again, lots of room for this thing to continue to grow. When we took over the project, the northern half had never even been mapped or sampled, or very little mapping and sampling. That's where we made our discovery at El Ruby. We've identified a number of new anomalies that will certainly be tested during this phase of drilling that we're on right now. We drill year round. We're, should have assays coming out in the next couple of weeks. And like I say, we're going to run at least a 20,000 meter drill program this year, though it'll probably ramp up like we did last year. I think last year we announced a 5,000 meter program and ended up doing almost 24,000 meters. I would expect to at least replicate that, but also probably, based on success, to increase that drill program. The strong management and technical group behind it, we sit within a group called the Belcara Management Group. We have 3 public companies under our management. I take the lead on Silver VIPR as the president and CEO. But one of the staples as a group is that you see management ownership at 20%. And all 3 of the Belcara Group companies, management owns over 20%. We're active in the market. We don't think there's a better place to invest our money but in ourselves. We have a very strong institutional ownership group within this company. I think it's at least 65% institutional, the ownership at the moment. It might even be higher than that. There's at least 20 different funds that own the stock. We've got lots of support from funds all over the world. Certainly the story has resonated with them. And then recently we've been increasing our retail following, and it's very much been growing through groups such as yourself, but also there's been another number of other groups on the front that have really been growing our retail support, especially in the US, where we've seen, some days our US volume is even higher than our volume on the venture exchange. Still very low share count. The company was set up as a true IPO in 2017. So with our recent financing that we just closed of $6 million, that takes us to approximately 95 million shares outstanding. Just quickly, here's the claims as they stand now. The blue claims was the claims that we got from the private project generator group out of Mexico, and you can see the terms there on the right. What had happened was Pan American, after they bought out mine finders for 1.5 billion, they completed the work program, but metals prices fell off a cliff. They don't do grassroots exploration in general, so what they did is they turned back those internal claims where all the historic work had been done and sat on a very large land package around them. And their thought was that internal group would ultimately end up dropping the claims and they could go back in and stake them, which didn't happen. You fast forward to 2018 and that internal group approached us and we were able to work out a deal with them and Pan American to bring the whole thing back together. But we inherited, over 50,000 meters of drilling and 188 holes that were all focused in that La Virginia, Com Virginia, Las Huatas area there in the blue claims. After we got involved, we made our discovery at El Ruby, and since then that's where we've certainly been focused with the majority of our drilling. You can see to get to the project, you fly into Hermosillo in Mexico, an international airport. You take a paved highway to the local town of Corp, and from there it's about 30 minutes in on a gravel and dirt road. We have very good infrastructure actually in this area for how remote we are here in the Sierra Madres. We've got water year round. We've got a power line corridor that was recently installed that goes right through the middle of the project that connects that town of Nacori Chico to the next town down the road of Mesa Tres Rios. I would like to draw your attention to this picture here. Actually, this is El Ruby, and what's nice about El Ruby is you can see it's a flat plateau. It's about 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in diameter, and that makes it really favorable for open pit mining versus a lot of the rest of the project where you can have some small starter pits. But from a topography standpoint, El Ruby is very favorable for open pit heap leach mining. This project was found by mine finders, and what they had done is they flew the whole mountain range where you had Dolores, which was their flagship mine, 100K to the south, and then El Tigre, which sits about 90K to our north, and there's been no modern operations in between. And that's very strange when you look at the periodicity of mines in Mexico. So they flew the whole range with helicopters, settled on La Virginia, being a lookalike on surface to Dolores. The area that they drilled was certainly interesting. It wasn't quite like Dolores, but when you start to look at El Ruby and compare notes on what they have at Dolores, and this is where the lookalike really comes in as far as when you're looking at the core, or looking at the Pathfinder elements. I mean, we're very confident that El Ruby here is the main event. That we can jump right into El Ruby. We're using all man-portable rigs at El Ruby. That's one of the reasons we were able to get into that portion of the project right away. When mine finders and Pan American were doing the exploration, they were using large track-mounted rigs. They were bulldozing in roads. They were having success where they were, but it was expensive exploration. With kind of technology changing over time and these man-portable rigs getting a lot stronger, we're able to go all over wherever we want on the project. We've got our permitting with SEMARNAT in place to drill everywhere. And really that is kind of why I think they ignored El Ruby. It was an obvious target when we did our site visit that, it was our #1 exploration target when we took over the project. But I think it was the fact that, man-portable rigs weren't as good, 10 years ago. And, we took advantage of that. You can see there, we reuse all the lumber for the pads. When we're done drilling on an area, we throw some seed down, and you can't tell, after a couple of weeks that we were even drilling there other than the drill color that's left in the ground. One of the unique things for us at El Ruby from our experience in Mexico has been, visible gold. And I guess here it's actually electrum, but you can see through the microscope what that gold looked like in the core. And in Mexico, typically, obviously, the silver mineralization jumps out at you, everywhere you go, but we haven't had a lot of experience of seeing visible gold. But in that El Ruby area of the project and a lot of our core, we do get these kind of the fine silver gold or fine visible gold in the core. And obviously always a good indicator of, assays that are going to come when we can see that. This slide's really important, especially with the work that we're going to be doing this year. One of the funds that Crescat, who just participated in our last placement, has Quentin Hennig there has kind of looked at this, and he started to compare this to a number of deposits around the world that he's seen in his time. And part of their participation is them getting excited about us targeting El Ruby at depth, and the big contact that we don't know where it is yet that they're excited about is where those rhyolites are going to meet the meta sediments. And so we're going to be doing some geophysics here. I believe at the start of August we have Quantec coming in to do the geophysics that we're looking at there that's going to identify structures down very deep. But the idea is that this is it's an epithermal system, but it's not a traditional epithermal system. And Quentin refers to it as a gold carbonate base metal deposit, but that comes from getting down to that meta sediments and getting into the the lime material where the carbonates come from, and that's where they're really expecting bonanza grades, which is interesting because we hit some pretty good bonanza grades already, over 10,000 grams silver and over 700 grams gold in a sample. But we're really looking forward to seeing kind of what the structure looks like at depth and what we're going to end up hopefully hitting later this year as we start to test this down much deeper on El Ruby. The rest of this is still very important for the open pit side. Again, that western zone was the discovery we made in hole 245 and has since expanded upon. That was the ounce building zone to our main El Ruby structure. Those were the broad 100-meter long kind of gram to gram and a half gold equivalent type rock that we were getting in that portion. And then when we hit kind of our main El Ruby structure, this was our 1 meter up to 19 meter wide high grade structure that had the low grade halos around it. It was the combination of those two that really made this exciting for open pit heap leach mining, but also showing the potential to continue to follow that El Ruby structure down at depth. Again, you can see some of the really exciting high grades that we've hit and a couple of the broad low grade zones. I won't spend too much time on that slide, but you can go back and reference that if you'd like to see some of the numbers. Dive right into the resource that we recently did. Again, we were thrilled. This exceeded, kind of what our expectations were going to be from an ounce perspective on the maiden resource. And really it was that broad low grade zone that really started to enhance it and expand very quickly at El Ruby, that resource. You can see these grades. A lot of people will say a 0.78 gold, well, that's low grade, 35 gram silver, but you've got to be familiar with the type of mining that people are going to be doing on it. Yes, if that was an underground grade, wouldn't work. But when you're looking at open pit heap leach deposits, the average open pit heap leach mine in the state and in the surrounding, in the US and surrounding states in Mexico operates about a 0.5 gram gold average grade. And so when you start to look at it through that eyes, this becomes very good grade. And those are types of deposits we're all making money at 1,200, 1,100 gold through the worst of times in our market. So from that, I can tell you that we got a lot of interest from majors right off the bat when we came out with some of our drill results and then followed it up with this resource. And this is something that is, in my opinion, and I think our independent's opinion, something that is very economic. We look forward to expanding it and growing, the tons and the ounces in the open pit. And then, like I say, we'll come up with something that I think will grab, when you start looking at our drill results, and you'll start to see something in the underground resource that starts to reflect those grades. And again, it'll be a good combination of both. I would expect to have 2 different circuits at a mine once you get to that point, but we've shown that the rock leaches very well. We've shown the silver actually leaches very well, which is also good for the open pit heap leach mining, especially the low grade silver. So very good start. You can see here, the top image is our El Ruby pit. And again, I referenced some material that was outside of the pit. There, I had our independent run it, but that's about 8,000 tons of rock. So not stuff that would, not big enough yet that it could make it and become an underground resource, but it was running at about 15 grams gold. So again, you can see that higher grade material and the potential as we move at depth on stuff like that. Again, and you can see all the ounces that are outside of the historic area where we are in a more mountainous area. So those pits don't necessarily bring in a lot of the other low grade ounces that exist in that historic area, but that's something that could expand as metals prices move up and you start looking at those and doing pit optimization models at higher numbers. There's also a lot of ounces that would be open pitable in that historic area that would just come from increasing the pit size. This section was kind of the first hint. I referenced the going deeper and looking for the gold carbonate type system. And this section really shows why we started thinking that, why Crescat and Quinton started thinking that. And that's when you're looking at the traditional epithermal models, here we've got 300 meters of depth shown on this section. And we've got high grade gold and silver at the surface with very, anomalous base metals at best. And then we go down 300 meters and other than one sample down there, again, you've got high grade gold and silver and still, anomalous base metals outside of 1/2 meter that ran high grade lead and zinc. So like I say, it's an epithermal system, but it's not the traditional model. We should be seeing 300 meters down, the gold and silver falling off and the base metals spiking up. And that's not what we have here. So like I said, we're going to be testing this deeper. We've certainly seen visually right now with our drilling that's ongoing that we, have mineralization in the rhyolites, but the big kind of in that system and in that model will be that contact between the rhyolites and the metasediments. Again, here with the focus and the drilling that we're doing now, before we go down at depth, we've got 300 meters of open end there to the south of the pit that we've been filling in with drilling at the moment. Again, that's all expansion and, we'll add to the resource. You can see down the bottom of the arroyo there, we had some narrow hits, but again, we think we have to go deeper on that section to pick up the El Ruby zone. And then to the north here on the left side of this image, we are fully confident that we're going to expand that pit. And we've started to go back and look at that core, and it looks like that northern end, we're in a down drop block similar to we saw at the south end of El Ruby. And so again, we've got lots of room to expand to the north as well on this portion of the project. We will be testing some other anomalies, and you can see them kind of lining up here in the geophysics that we've done already. La Gloria, we won't be putting anything in La Gloria at the moment. That's a 3K by 3K porphyry target that we put a couple shallow holes into in phase 1. The target that we're really excited about at the moment, or 2 targets, would be Macho Libre and testing it at depth, and then La Colmena, which has never seen any drill results, that we've seen some really interesting stuff from our surface mapping and sampling there as well. I mentioned recoveries. Again, you can see here that kind of sample 4 where you got up to 76% silver leaching, that's, you know, that's fantastic. That would be above industry standards for open pit heap leach mines. And again, that's a great step. We're going to do some additional network just to show that we can recover the high grade silver through a secondary circuit, which will coincide, you know, with an underground resource and how you would treat. We've also going to do some ore scanning and other studies to see if you can't help, you know, make things more efficient on that front as well. I mentioned the group. Our last big success was Orco Silver. Again, that's our group's model. We take something along an exploration timeline, take it as far as a feasibility study, but look to vend off to one of the major mining companies. Just quickly here, because I'm out of time. You can see our cash position, our share structure, a couple of our larger institutional holders, but again, there's over 20 of those. Red Cloud Securities has the official coverage on the company at the moment, and you can reach out to them if you'd like to see a copy of that report. And then with that, I mean, in summary, I think we check off all the boxes. We've got a high quality asset. We're in a great jurisdiction, strong management technically behind it, lots of potential, good shareholder support, and we're well financed.